Time to expose the hypocrites. Ladies and gentlemen, this will only take a moment.
Columbine.
I like the way you die, boy.
Kill all the white people in the movie. How great is that?
Virginia Tech.
Tucson.
Aurora.
Fort Hood. Oak Creek. Newtown.
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 How many more? How many more? How many more colleges? How many more classrooms?
Okay, I can understand why people like that.
How many more movie theaters?
Here we go. Yes.
How many more houses of faith?
Yeah, that's gangster style.
How many more shopping malls?
Let's kill it. You talking to me, bitch?
Easy there, fella.
Okay.
How many more street corners?
How many more?
How many more?
Enough. Enough.
It's kind of cool, actually.
Enough. Enough.
Demand a plan.
Right now. As a mom.
As a dad. As a friend. As a husband.
As a wife.
As an American.
As an American. As an American.
As a human being.
For the children of Sandy Hook.
Demand a plan. No more lists of names. It's not too soon.
It's too late.
Now is the time.
Before we all know someone who loved someone on that list.
No more lists.
No more.
Who they might have been. No more.
If we had just done something yesterday. It's time.
We can do better than this.
We can do better than this.
It's time.
It's time.
It's time for our leaders to act.
Demand a plan. Right now.
I'm beginning to get tired of you, Dr. Bronfman.
Right now.
You! Demand it!
Enough.
She should know how to respond. Enough.
Well, now you're the dead guy. And he just put the gun.
Enough.
Enough.
If banning guns is the answer, why is the crime rate in Chicago so horrendous? Why is Baltimore rife with gun violence? Why are the cities in our country with the harshest gun control measures the most dangerous cities with the worst gun violence? Banning guns won't work. If banning guns worked, why didn't the crime rate plummet during the so-called assault weapons ban? Why didn't the Brady Bill cause gun violence to disappear? Banning guns won't work. Why can't liberals name one gun control law in our country that has proven to decrease violence and crime? banning guns won't work. How does MS-13 get their hands on guns? How did the San Bernardino terrorists, Tashfeen Malik and Saeed Farouk, how did they get a hold of their weapons? Criminals don't follow the law. Banning guns leaves us, law-abiding citizens, without a means for defense, while all the guns end up illegally in the hands of killers. Banning guns won't work. If guns themselves are the problem, why do our politicians have armed security details protecting them? Why do liberal anti-gun celebrities have armed security guards that follow them around wherever they go? I'll tell you why. Because a good guy with a gun is always the best solution to a bad guy with a gun. Banning guns won't work. If AR-15s are the problem, why is it that only 2.5% of murders in our nation are committed with rifles? 374 murders with rifles out of 15,070 total murders, 2.5%. Twice as many killers murder their victims with their feet in their hands than with rifles. If the murder weapon is the problem, where are liberals calling to ban feet? Banning guns won't work. 200,000 times a year, women defend ourselves against sexual abuse with a firearm. Is that something liberals really want to take away from us? Banning guns won't work. Firearms are used 80 times more often in our country to save a life than to take a life. Is that something liberals really want to take away from us? Banning guns won't work. This country is a free nation. We are the United States of America instead of Germany or Japan or the British colonies because of brave men under 21 with firearms. Punishing law-abiding adults for the crimes of heinous killers is not the answer. Banning guns won't work. You see, our right to keep and bear arms is not a privilege that can be voted away. It cannot be infringed. It is a right guaranteed to be protected by our Constitution. It is a right necessary to defend ourselves against insane and evil people who try to harm us and a government that tends towards tyranny. Guns are not the problem. And if you're not willing to talk about the dangers of gun-free zones, if you're not willing to talk about protecting our students with armed security guards and teachers with concealed carry firearms, if you're not willing to talk about the social impacts of absent fathers and black box psychiatric drugs, and the failure of the sheriff's office and the FBI in stopping this killer before he waged his attack, you are not part of the solution. Neither is banning guns. If the government knocks on our doors at the point of a gun, demanding that we surrender our guns, believe me, banning guns won't work. All right, John, let's talk about this. First of all, according to the FBI, and the latest data that we have from this is from 2016. The data from 2017 has not yet come in. The latest data in 2016, there were 15,070 homicides in our country. 11,004 of those 15,000 homicides were gun-related homicides. What percentage of those were committed with rifles, John?
A very small percent. I think it's around 5%.
It's 2.5%. 2.5% of homicides in our country were committed with rifles. We can go down the list. Shotguns, homicides by shotguns, 1.7%. Handguns, 47% of homicides in our country were committed by handguns. 11.9% were committed with knives. 4.4% were committed with hands and feet. My question is, why are liberals targeting AR-15s? Why are they targeting semi-automatic rifles? Why are they targeting rifles at all when twice as many murderers kill their victims with their feet?
This shows the dishonesty going on among liberals who are trying to get rid of all guns. Again and again, now they're saying we want to get rid of all semi-automatic weapons, which was basically almost every kind of a gun you can get your hands on now, or you can purchase. But they aren't interested in focusing on solutions. One thing, too, if you look at the stats, if they were concerned about murder or gun violence, the crime rate has plummeted almost every year since 1991. They don't seem to mention that. Gun violence has dramatically decreased.
Right, ABC News said there were 18 school shootings in the first 45 days of 2018, according to Everytown. And New York Daily News said the same thing. But that's not true. Okay, twice, so they counted these as gun incidents on campus. Twice, someone shot themselves on a school grounds. One incident on January 3rd featured a man shooting himself in a former school's parking lot. On January 10th, a teen killed himself in an Arizona elementary school bathroom. Okay, that is not a school shooting, that is a school suicide. Okay, 4 times, a bullet was fired through a school or dorm's window. A gunshot on January 4th was fired at a high school in Seattle through an office window. No one was hurt. On January 10th, a shot was fired, shattering a California university classroom window. No injuries reported. The same day in Texas, a bullet was accidentally fired through a classroom wall at the Grayson College Criminal Justice Center. No one injured. On January 15th, a bullet traveled through a residential hall's dorm room. No injuries reported. On January 25th, a Mobile, Alabama high school student fired a gun on campus. No injuries. On January 26th, shots were fired from a car in a parking lot. No injuries. On February 5th, a third grader pulled the trigger on a cop's gun. No one was injured. On February 8th, a shot was fired inside Metropolitan High School. No one was injured. Okay, there have only been a few cases in which someone was injured other than the shooter. January 22nd in Texas, a teenage girl was wounded by shots from a semi-automatic handgun. At the same day, a 14-year-old boy was injured in a shooting in Gentilly, Louisiana. February 1st, 5 children were injured in an accidental shooting, so that's not even a purposeful shooting, it's accidental. And finally, on February 5th, a teenager was shot and injured outside a high school. Like, this is you wonder why people don't trust the media. It's because the media don't bother to do any of this. They just give you the bottom line, 18 school shootings, and then the minute you dig into it, you realize there were not.
What happens when trouble comes knocking at their door and they don't have any way to protect themselves? What are they going to do? Have a listen to this policeman.
Hello, my name is Aaron Weiss, and I live in the town of Poughkeepsie. I'm a combat veteran of Iraq, and I'm also a law enforcement officer. I attended the Public Safety Committee's last meeting in regards to this resolution, but I didn't say anything because I wanted to hear what everyone else had to say. And I heard some shocking things from some people and some legislators. They said that it took a lot of courage to pass this SAFE Act. Apparently my definition of courage differs from yours. You see, if it was really so courageous a bill and it took so much courage to pass it, then why was it done in the middle of the night when no one could see it or read it? That's not courage. That's a mafia-style sit-down to divvy up what's good for the bosses. Courage is taking the right and true course of action, not the politically expedient one. And anyone who is proud of this law must also be proud of the Patriot Act, the TSA, imprisoning Japanese citizens in World War II, since all these actions were spurred on by emotional fear and rammed through in the name of public safety. Another issue is the insistence of certain people to stand on the graves of dead children and challenge those that disagree to say it to the parents' faces. Well, I, for one, will pick up that gauntlet. First off, why is dead children your battle cry? You didn't say anything about the hundreds of Chicago children being killed, and for some reason you only scream when it happens to wealthy white ones. And yes, I will say to anyone's face, my right is more important than your dead, because I fought for it firsthand. I washed the blood of my friends out of my Humvee, and I picked up their mangled bodies, and I fought day in and day out. I did more things that you people can't imagine. So yeah, my right trumps your dead. I earned it in blood. I gave up a lot for this country, including my youth, and better men than me gave up a whole lot more, so that all you, myself included, could enjoy the rights that are guaranteed to us in our Constitution and Bill of Rights. And we didn't go through all that to come back home and watch the surrender of what we fought for happen based on the demented actions of a couple madmen. So in closing, I would like to address specifically the legislators we all know who are going to vote against this resolution. I understand you will vote against this resolution based on some misguided sense of the public good. However, as a law enforcement officer, I'm curious to know about your true resolve. Since voting to take away someone's rights is totally different than being asked to enforce it, I want you to consider this. If you support the SAFE Act so wholeheartedly, are you willing to stand with law enforcement members and lead from the front to enforcement? And what I mean by that is if a constituent of yours feels so alienated by this law and the manner in which it was passed that they refuse to comply with it, are you willing to stack up on their front door and go in first? I bet if a clause was in this bill that required you, the elected leadership, our elected leaders, to go in the door first, I bet you would not be so steadfast.
Another good argument. A load of these people with their guns are not going to give them up without a fight. I mean, you're not going to get a Waco perhaps, but nevertheless you could get a bloodbath when they don't want to give up. And why should they? You're taking away their constitutional rights, by stealth, by whatever way you want to call it. I mean, fancy passing laws at night time so nobody knew about it. If that's not dark and sinister and just basically out of order, I don't know what is. When you take all the guns away from the good people and leave it with the bad people, what do you think is going to happen?
Charlton Heston made the phrase, "from my cold dead hands," famous. And I will tell you here today, you will take my ability to protect my Victoria from my cold dead hands.
tear them all